All right, all right, all right. No, I'm not on the potty. Let's wait until everybody gets here. Because the announcement goes out at, 4. So some people aren't on and the tune goes through it. So, and you can chat amongst yourselves, which you always do. I'm looking very studious with my glasses on today because I can't see pedals and knobs and stuff without them. So, how's everybody doing? Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for BB for being here as always. Great to have you every week or every other week. So thanks, BB. I'm trying to go every week now, just to let you know, BB. Started to get back to doing this once a week, which was fun. Yeah. So today, first thing, I have my Soloing with Minor Triads course, and that is on sale for 50% off just for the next few days. It came out on Friday, and you guys have been picking it up. Thank you so much. And the people who are in my inner circle over at my jam guitar lessons, I appreciate that as well. And so I have mastering major triads, mastering minor triads, soloing with major triads, and soloing with minor triads. So there's the triad quattro or something like that. So thanks everybody who's picked those up. I really appreciate it. I think they're a ton of fun, if I do say so myself. All right, so a bunch of things to talk about. I was at NAMM, so we could talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit about boost pedals. And I brought out the old Marshall, because some of these things sound really fun with the Marshall, as well as they do with the Two-Rock. But when I get to this Rangemaster stuff, they work particularly nicely with the Marshall. And that's kind of the classic sounds we're used to. So, all right. Everybody good? We got the roll call here. Joe Bernowski, Billy Wagner, Jason Carter, Jason Walters, Phil Jones, of course. I think Phil was first, right? It was Phil today. David Tyndall, Tommy Raper. Well, you got here on time. Who else we got? Yeah, well, a bunch of other people. Thanks so much, everyone. All right. So the first thing we can talk about is, let's get this lined up here. Billboard. Here's what I got going on today. So the first thing is I'm running through my Marshall Super Lead. I have a kind of that breaking up. It sounds great without anything. For that Wheels of Fire sort of thing by Eric Clapton, of course. So going on over here, I can't really show you. I've got the two inputs going on. I have one, they're jumpered internally, so I have the bass side and the treble side going on. And so the interesting thing is when you start looking at boost pedals, and there's all different kinds. So I'm kind of more focusing in on the cleaner side of boost pedals. Well, at first, we'll start out on the cleaner side of boost pedals. So, roll my volume up. The first thing, what I've got here, and I've set them in a certain order. I put a fuzz in the beginning because we're going to see how cool a fuzz can sound with some boost pedals. We have a Rangemaster, which is, it changes the tone significantly. That's what's kind of cool about these. The apocryphally was used on the Bluesbreaker record where they said, like, Clapton was using a Rangemaster in front of the JTM 45. I don't think he was. I don't necessarily hear it, but you definitely hear that. As we'll get to some of the sounds as you hear from Brian May, Rory Gallagher, Sabbath, and even like early Judas Priest would use this sound. And I'm going to match some of those sounds up. You can hear that. Next, we have the Greer Lightspeed, which is kind of considered just a really, really popular transparent overdrive. Now, of course, is a boost and overdrive? Is an overdrive a boost? Sometimes they're both. They can be both. I know these two are technically not just boosts. They are both overdrives as boosts as well, but we can run them as clean boosts, and I like both these a lot in both those situations. Okay, so then here we have the Klon, the KTR. As you know, I sold my other Klon, the gold one, and don't regret it. So here we go, is the KTR, and over here is, sorry about the light, it's just reflecting the Vertex Boost, which is a great pedal. I usually have this one at the end of my chain because it's got an incredibly good buffer at the end of the chain as well. So that's what I kind of like about that. So let's go through them. So there's a number of ways you can use a boost. One is to boost volume. and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first we're going to talk about boosting a bit of gain. So we're going to hit the front end of a distorted amplifier to make it a little more distorted for solos or rhythm guitar parts or something it's going to boost the gain of the front end of the amp. So in a lot of ways, what you're doing is almost like adding, well, we are volume going into the front end of the amp. So hitting the front end of the amp and distorting the preamp tubes more. So if I hit this, now what I like about this pedal a lot is it's pretty transparent. Right? Turn it off. So I like to have one of these for two reasons. I always have this pedal at the end of my chain. If I'm running into a clean amp, I can boost the overall volume of everything. So if I'm running clean into my 2-Rock, I can just boost the volume of everything that comes before it. And that's kind of nice. And it's got the buffer. Also, if I'm running into a distorted amp, it's just another way I can push the front end of the amp, and I like the sound of that as well. So it's super, super neutral sounding. So yeah. So I really think it's one of my favorite boost pedals, and it's a little subtle in the sense of here it's just boosting more volume, which is actually kind of cool because if you've noticed, it hasn't really changed the tone of the amplifier that much, right? So that's pretty cool, and I think that's what a lot of people want in a boost, something that's not going to color things too much. Now if we go a little bit further over to the right, we're going to end up coloring stuff a little bit more, right? So I'm going to switch over to a Strat at some point and clean up the amp. We'll go through all these sort of things as well. Okay, so I'm going to put the Klon on with no, with the neutral. I'm going to put no drive on the Klon. So they have no names, but that's the drive, if I remember right. That's drive, volume, and tone. So I'm going to put the drive, but actually the tone in the middle, and the drive and the volume on that in the middle. So I turn it off. I haven't played much. Sorry, you're hearing me not sing that good. Wouldn't be New York without the siren behind me. I don't even hear it anymore. Same licks as always, but now the cool thing about the Klon is that we can put in some of the gain, and that's where it starts to become really like the Klon, and it pushes your mids a bit more. Now if I do that again. So you're just kind of pushing the mids a little bit more, and you get more mids the more drive you put on it. Now if I turn the drive off all the way, it's going to crank the volume. Now here, it's a bit thuddy, so I can put some more treble in. And it kind of takes away some of that thud because we've taken away a little bit of the low end. And that's one of the important things when you're boosting, especially into distortion. We're going to see in a minute that the beauty of things like the Range Master, that you can start to tailor how much low end you have coming out. So my favorite boost pedals that I use to boost the front end of an amplifier, which can be overdrive pedals, are ones that have some sort of tone control on it. Or I might shave off some of the low end, because you push a lot of low end into the front end of a distorted amp, it starts to get flubby. So a lot of times the more gain you get, you want to roll back some of the low end. And I can plug in another pedal and show you all that kind of stuff. But here, I'll show you what I mean. Like, that's more bite. And then when I add the overdrive in a Klon circuit, you get a bit more of those mids, and that cuts through. So it added a lot of mids. So tube screamers do the same sort of thing, and that's why Klons are really, really popular, especially when you're playing live, because that mid-range frequency helps you cut through everything, and that's really, really cool. All right, so the next one is the Guerrero Lightspeed, which I really like. It's considered really one of the best sort of transparent overdrives. I have to agree. I mean, it's just kind of more. I think that's a great sounding pedal because it doesn't really color the sound too much. And I can dial back some high end, right? Add some more punch in front. You can leave it on all the time and then dial it back. So that's also a cool sound. So I'm leaving the gain boost on all the time. And as I bring up my volume, I get more gain. So I love this pedal. It's really articulate. Sometimes it makes it to my board. I've got so many pedals, and I like all of them. But this is one that I think really is, like I said, really well known for being sort of a very transparent overdrive. So if you notice, these two are both pretty transparent. So it's really kind of nice how you can choose between those. Now, the reason why I like this one is because I can put more gain into everything, right? And then use it as a lead boost and then shave off some low end. Especially in the neck. I'm playing super gainy, just to try to show you what it can do. Now really on a gig, I mean, how much more am I going to boost that? Maybe like that much? Especially if you're playing live and you got a lot of volume behind you, it's going to do a lot. You've got to have that kind of circuit that's created when you're cranking an amp. And it's going to sound different than me playing, hitting my camera. Okay, that was a cool move, right? That was pretty smooth. Hold on, let me fix that. It's live, guys. Let me see that. That was awesome. So it's kind of hard to recreate some of these things, certainly over YouTube, me playing through an aux or the 100-watt Marshall playing through studio monitors. It's a very different experience live. So the amount of gain that sometimes I push on the front end here, you maybe would not do live because you're interacting with the amp and it's just going to sound better in the real world. So this is not the real world. All right. Now for something completely different. The Range Masters have been really kind of a tough thing for me to figure it out a while ago. And some I liked and some that I didn't. So my friend at Static Effectors sent this over. And it's what a Range Master is it really is like it's a notched filter. So you have different things where you can cut off the high end or boost the mids or add low end. And as we go through some of the settings, some of them sound really familiar, and I'll switch up to a Strat, and it's really pretty cool. So if I go straight into the Marshall, and I'm going to start, I've got a 5-position thing, or is it 6? I can't remember. So it takes a lot of the low end out. It sounds a bit like kind of a cocked wah a little bit. So I'm cranking the front end here into the front of the amp. I can roll that back and roll my volume up. And I can change the amount of roll off on the low end. So second note. And if I roll it back, it kind of cleans up differently than some of the overdrives. I'm not sure if it is germanium. I should know that. I'm sorry. Kyle Burrs, if you're online, let me know. And a lot of earlier guys would use this, like Ritchie Blackmore and Roy Gallagher and Brian May. So the Brian May thing, kind of right there. If I had a AC30 and Brian's guitar, maybe it's not different. But there, you get a bit more of this focused mid-range thing. So it's often called a treble booster, because you are pushing the high end, but very often you are not so much pushing the high end as you are removing some of the low end or changing the EQ structure of the whole thing. Hear it? All right, so now, if I keep on going further, another click, start getting more into like Sabbath-y territory. We're starting to push the low end a bit more. That doom stuff, right? So I go a little thicker. What's really cool, let's bring back the volume. Cleans up great, kind of like a fuzz. Pretty sweet. Now, I'm going to switch over to Les Paul just for a second, so you can hear a little bit different. All right. So this, if I kind of go right here, another one of my favorite bands, if I'm at Spot. So early Judas Priest, so you're thinking like British Steel and before. Kind of that sound that really weird, take a 50-watt Marshall, push into the front end and get a little bit more gain out of it, a little more drive. So you can play around with the volume and the output of this. It's pretty cool. They're a ton of fun. So that's what a range master does. So it's pretty distinctive, definitely much more of a tone shaper to me than anything else. Well, it's a great boost, but it's much more tonal stuff to it. They're more distinctive sounding. Now, I've tried a few different other range masters. I really like what Kyle did with whatever value these are. It really sounds great to me. I've tried other ones that are a bit too mid-range. You sound almost like you can't get away from that cocked wah thing, which I really like, but not for everything. This has got more options to it than some other brands that I've tried. Okay. So now, so it's very different. It's a Klon, then. And even the way they interact with your volume knob is different. This keeps that, as we'll see in a minute when I go into the fuzz phase, it keeps that same kind of, that really cool, bright top end. Okay, that's a germanium, that's why, yeah. That's part of that whole sound. So this is, thanks, Kyle Burris from Static Effectors is on here answering some of these questions. But yeah. That's just the Marshall being pushed with the Range Masters. I'm having a great time with this. I just got it, and I was like, I got to go online and talk about this thing. All right, next up is, well, just the fuzz. I'm not a big fuzz and a Les Paul guy, but this is also a Static Effectors fuzz. So that's pretty hairy on a Les Paul, but watch. Now I realize that's a lot of gain, but that's that kind of doom cool guitar sound that I love. That's very Sabbathy in a lot of those bands. So what's really nice about a fuzz before a range master is the fuzz can get kind of unfocused, right? You get that super flubby low end at times, especially with the humbucker, and you go into something like the range master and it focuses the mid range. Klons are very similar. Right? And then the range master. But you hear that sometimes in those old recordings when somebody turns down their volume. It's like, especially like, it's Angus on here. Sabbath, was it Live at Last, right? You hear that kind of thing when Naomi's definitely got a fuzz and a range master and he turns down. This clean sounds become this super sparkly clean. And then he just rolls up his volume and this is just a range master. So you bring down that volume. I mean, how much fun is that, right? Okay, so let's switch it over to Strat. Any questions, anyone? Is this fun or is this boring? It's pretty nerdy, but I have fun doing this stuff. Because you never get a chance to hear these things. I'm fortunate enough to have a bunch of these things. All right, so I'm just going to use this one because I realized my 64 has got ancient strings on it. I played the gig with Robin, and it never changed my strings. So. Oh. It was in tune with hook up a tuner. Very professional. So while I tune, yeah, I got my mastering and soloing with minor triads course available. 50% off. Sorry, guys. It was in tune a couple minutes ago. So does everybody want a range master now? This is the one, I gotta say, I've tried a few, and this is the one I've been most happy with. So yay, Kyle, man. It's really fun. And I plugged it into the Two-Rock, and that's the same kind of effect. You can get like a doomy sound out of the Two-Rock, because it's pushing all like that low end, and it's really fun. All right. Okay, cool. All right, so here's the Strat. Now, I'm going here into my Super Lead. So I have it kind of on that breaking up thing. Once again, if I were live and you're in the room with it experiencing the amp at a volume, these are very different experiences. That's one thing I think a lot of people don't understand. If you don't get the opportunity to play something like this really loud and you're like, yeah, it sounds great, it's certainly going to sound great this way, but when you get in the room with a Marshall and it's at volume or any amp at volume, you got one of these pedals on the floor, it's different. It's because volume, definitely volume. Okay. Okay, now let's go through the boosts again. So here's the Vertex. It's great. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. Just turn up the volume and stuff. I will say things definitely sound better when I have this at the end of the chain anyway, because it's got the good buffer in there, so I always have that at the end. All the way up. Pretty cool. That sounds great. All right, so now over the Klon, I'm going to dial back the gain so we don't have the overdrive, the mids, the overdrive. So pretty comparable. So I really like that we can get all these three to sound pretty transparent. Now the Klon stops being transparent when you put up the mids. It's turning out of trouble a little bit in the end. Pretty cool. That's the kind of traditional Klon thing where you get that mid push. Now, light speed. I love it. It doesn't even sound like you put it on in a good way. I can dial in how much boost I want. So as I talked about in many of my videos, I will dial in everything for the neck pickup on a guitar, say the Strat. So I get that kind of, you know, Jimmy thing. Then I'll dial in, I have a tone knob on my bridge pickup, because that's a bit bitey. It's cool, but if I roll back my tone knob on my guitar, got the pickup for my bridge pickup, I have the tone knob right here. So match them out. So we're all the way up. Dial it back in here. It really matches up nicely, the tone of the two pickups. And there's no, you know, how much I roll back the tone knob on the bridge is just a matter of the capacitor that's on the guitar. People are like, what do you have it turned down to? I have it turned down to what sounds right to my ear. On my 64, it's got a different kind of capacitor. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different. It might be 5 on this. It might be 3 on that or 6 on that or something. Who knows? So you just do it by ear. You go back between these two. So what I love about these is they're all very nondescript in the best way, except for the clum when you push the mids. So you're really just kind of getting a bigger sound of your amp with more overdrive, which is a transparent overdrive. Okay, now if I go here, we get out of the realm of being transparent, but still really cool. So on the second click, kind of that Rory Gallagher territory. Of course, not neighbor. Why am I so out of tune today? Of course, not nailing the tone. It's an AC30 and all that stuff. But it's that he would use a treble booster. My understanding is that he would leave it on the whole time, as would Brian May, and just dial back the guitar with the volume knob. So you're always getting that more gain. And if you ever listen to Brian May, I think it was that interview with Rick Beato. His amp's pretty noisy. There's a lot of hiss because you have that treble booster hitting all that front end, so you're gonna hear like this stuff, you know. Especially if you're playing a Strat, you're gonna hear a lot of hiss. Okay, so a bit more of that Brian May thing. Turn down your volume. And it's really that germanium cleanup that there's a certain thing to it, that it keeps that really crisp high end that a fuzz does. I could be wrong, but that's what I am noticing. So I turn it off. Leave it on and just ride my volume. Hear that? Great. That is sweet. Right? It's got a different sort of roll-off sound than the non-germanium stuff. So, yeah. Especially with the Marshalls. You know, if you already have an amp that's distorting, like I said, it sounds really great with the Two-Rock, but if you're running a cleaner amp, I think that the Rangemaster stuff sounds best to me, in my experience so far, through something that is already overdriven, and you want to crank it up a bit more. Right? There is Tracy Farmer's on. Hey, Street, what's up, babe? By the way, there isn't a static Ranger available, at least on Reverb. Hey, Kyle, if you're still on, just go to Static Effectors, and he will make one for you. It's running on a battery right now. You put an AC in there too. Okay, now get a little thicker. Out. Boy, that's a lot of fun. Especially that cleanup. You hear that Jimmy sound, right? I'm going to cut the fuzz in a second. But so if I turn this off and do it just with the Marshall. With the boost on it. You can even dial it back. Pretty cool. Alright, get a little thicker. I always want to go to drop D. It seems like a big commercial for his pedal, but I'm just having so much fun with it because it does something totally different. So it's definitely going to find its way onto my Marshall board. All right, then last one here is the thick stuff. Now, of course, I'm cranking the output. So I can do this. But that's pushing out a lot of low end, so that's a bit flubby for more than I would want right now. But you dial in for the amp, and also you can dial it in for the gig, which is really cool. So if you want more out front, you would just kind of dial that knob in. Just like you would with any of these, you dial in more high end or more low end or something like that. But here, just that roll off is killer. Okay, now, the fuzz, so this is also Static Effectors fuzz. And it's sort of like a fuzz face with a few different low end notches. So I plugged in the fuzz for two reasons. One, it is germanium as well, so right, I'm lowering my volume, excuse me, and I'm getting that great high end. Right? But with fuzzes on that neck pickup, it gets that really thick fatty thing. So if I put this on, so it can really brighten up that neck pickup. So, like I said, when you hear Tony Iommi play, you definitely hear that sound like this. That weird buzz stuff. Everything turns off right away. This thing. That high end you get. You roll it back. But love that. This thing right now, I'm not getting fuzz. All right, so that's a lot of play, a lot of blabbing. I just wanted to show you. I know they're very different, and I'm kind of really having most of the time spent on the static effector static ranger, just because I'm having a ton of fun with it. But what I wanted to point out, what I didn't really know for a really long time, was what a Rangemaster did. I'll probably just do a video on the Rangemaster into a Marshall. I think it'd be fun to kind of talk about that sound and who did that. But what I like is it's just another flavor. So to me, it's a bit more vintagey sounding. It gets you that really cool high end on the roll off that a fuzz does. Now these don't do that, but these are more, especially the Lightspeed and the Vertex boost, they're definitely transparent boosts. They're not meant to color your tone, and they don't, which is really amazing to have as well, because you don't always want your tone colored. Next thing is the Klon type circuit, which I also really like because that pushes the mids a bit more. So as you guys have seen my other big pedal board, which is over there, there's like 4 overdrives on it. And these are for a bunch of different reasons that I've just mentioned. I could have my Vemaram Shanks, which is like kind of the always on if I'm running into a clean amp. Then I have the Duelist, both sides, and I can push it. The Blues Breaker side's a bit more neutral, and then the Tube Screamer side pushes the mids. Then I've got my little Klon. They've got the Tumnus because it's small. It's got the cool buffer in it, and that also does another thing. And then I have a fuzz before it. So the fuzz that I have before it, I am pushing into the Klon, and that focuses the low end, just like we kind of saw over here with between these two pedals. All right. Hopefully this was fun. Sunshine Your Love is in there somewhere for sure. But the second I play that, I'm going to get dinged. So, are there any questions? I think we're, hopefully people are hanging out. All right, let me go through. Any questions here? All right. Looking through the questions. Forget about that boost pedal. That Marshall sounds fantastic. Yeah, it's a 1972 Marshall Super Lead. It's the real deal. It's great. Jason Lachlan in the house. Conspicuous absent Barber gain changer on the low gain mode. You know, there's so many pedals, so many to get. Angus Clark, what's up, man? Sounds great. Thanks. I thought about you with this Rangemaster, man. Angus being the big Tony Iommi and Richie Blackmore guy. And, of course, his own guy. Is a boost pedal needed if I'm only playing it to my DAW? I didn't think I needed a compression pedal until I got one. Now I need more compression pedals, LOL. Yeah, I think any boost pedal is important because you can. What I really like is that you can dial in whatever frequency you find to be missing. You know, so I think everybody's got I think boost pedals are great. Absolutely. Jason Lachlan, can you try them with a cleaner sound? No. Hold on. Okay, it's pretty clean. What's going on today? There we go. Look at that Vertex boost clean, right? Which of course is going to push the front end of the amp and start to distort a little bit. I don't think any of these are really meant to be played into a too clean an amp if you're overdriving. Klon. Now the Lightspeed. Once again, that one just sounds like more. day. So that sounds pretty great. So let's hear the, where are we at here? Let's go to number 2. Now you see, for the cleaner amp though, you get a lot more tonal change. Still getting that cool cleanup. But I'm still pushing the front end at this point of the amplifier. So this isn't really producing any overdrive itself. So to me it sounds like a cool, seems most used traditionally. It's a bit more of an overdriven amp. Clean, I mean, it still sounds good, but you're really changing the EQ. That point is like an EQ changer to me. Right, Jason? Cool. The Gibson Red and Special, close enough. War Pigs, yeah, you can hear Sabbath and all that stuff, for sure. Do I still have the Matt Professor boost, and can you show how you would use it here? Like Matt's Matt Professor, I think it's in the closet. I'd have to dig it out. That's an overdrive to me. Like, so I would dial that. I would be more like Klon-like or the Lightspeed. The reason why I just chose these two is because you can make them really transparent. The Klon, you can make it transparent without using the gain side, the gain knob. And here I can just make it kind of, this is pretty transparent on their own. Jason Ortelius, what's up, man? How's it going? This is fun. There was a time when you paid $300 for an OD. Not anymore. They all started to sound the same. Could be. Is Evil on vacation? Hold on. No, I just have to move stuff around. He's over here. So. It's hot on top of that Marshall. All right. It's hot on top of the Marshall. No joke. So, Gura makes great stuff. He totally does. All these guys do. All right. New York City is rocking. Anyone tried the 18-watt power boost? Gilmore uses something similar. It's kind of like a big. I've not tried that, so I can't say. I'm not 100% sure what that does, other than push the front end, which is probably what he was doing to push the front end of the fuzz or something. I can't remember. I don't know. I wasn't there. What's the purpose of putting a boost? Oh, what's the purpose of putting boost pedal into the effects loop? Oh yeah, right. BV answered that. You can boost the volume without depending on the placement. It just boosts the volume, of course. Yeah. It's kind of like how I have my other pedal board set up, which I can pull out. I have everything running into a clean amp, and I have the overdrives before the volume pedal, and I can just bring all the volume up and down. You know. Okay. Marshall Superlead was severed to. Yes, right. The Marshall Superlead was 7 tubes, 510 volts DC on EL34 plates through an aux box. The ultimate overdrive pedal. I know, totally ridiculous. I mean, if this were, that would be deafening stage. That'd be like arena volume, which you can't even play at arenas at that volume anymore. That would be crazy. Yeah, I did go between single coils and humbuckers on this. Okay, any other questions on the pedals? I just wanted to kind of play through them because people have often asked me, what does a Rangemaster do? What does it sound like? And I'm really getting into it now because through the Marshall, especially with overdrive, that's where I think this thing really does its thing. You know, the Rangemaster to me sounds best with overdrive. So far, to my ears. It's a cool tone thingy, but I think absolutely that's the right way to go to overdrive. Okay, it's maybe a dumb question, but what is the difference between a tube screamer and a boost pedal? That's not a dumb question at all. They're both, you can, right, tube screamers are boost pedals in many ways, right? You can run the volume high. So a lot of guys will run well, I'll explain here. A lot of guys will run the volume high. And what that does is that pushes a lot of dB, a lot of volume into the front end of a tube amplifier, and therefore it distorts the input tubes more, right? So you're pushing them harder. And that's what Brian May would do with the Rangemaster, and a lot of guys earlier on wanted to get more overdrive out of their amplifiers than the amps did. So what he would do is he would crank up the volume and push into the front end of the amplifier. So now, on something like the Greer, I could dial back the gain knob and use that as a big clean boost. Right? Or I could also push up the drive, and you're adding an overdrive. And both. So it gives me more overdrive and compression, as opposed to just more volume, which will in turn compress the input of the amplifier. Does that make sense? So you're just putting more and more gain, putting more information into the front end of the amplifier. Particularly a Tube Screamer has a real mid-rangey hump, a bit more similar to the Klon in a sort of way. So you're really getting a bit more nasal. So you're getting overdrive and volume boost. But you're also getting more mid-range. And I can do both. The only thing you have to be careful of is you want to boost volume into an overdriven amp, or an amp that overdrives easily. You have to be careful, because if I turn this up loud and I just want to increase the volume of everything, I often can't do that into the front end of the amp if I don't have enough headroom. So if my amp is like fairly clean for Marshall, if it were loud, it wouldn't be as distorted feeling, So, I mean, if you're loud in a room with it, this is the experiential thing that you just cannot get online. So, but if I'm going to push the front end harder, I get more volume, but I also get more distortion. If I'm on a gig and I'm this loud, which would be impossibly loud, I would have so much clean headroom that you can't really get through an aux at this volume. It's very difficult to emulate that. So on a gig, this would be so loud I'd be running it clean, and then you could use pedals in front of it to get overdrive. So as hard as I push the front end of the amp, it probably wouldn't distort because I have so much headroom set on the amp. If I turn the preamp up and I get more gain from the amplifier, that's just a super lead. And if I hit this boost, I'm getting more volume, but I'm also getting more gain because I'm pushing the front end of the amp more harder. What does that mean? I was going to say it's difficult to get a volume boost, a clean volume boost. You can't really do that too much. So that's where you would have to maybe put the volume boost in the effects loop. There's all sorts of ways around it. But that's why when I'm gigging, say with my Two-Rocks, I use them a lot because they have a lot of great clean headroom. And that way I can push the front end of the amp, I can push the volume of the pedals without my amp distorting in a bad way. Because the more compression you get and the more distortion, your dynamics go out the window, and it's just not nearly as fun to play because it stinks. It's as you kind of cap out, and then the amp starts folding over on itself, and not my favorite thing. Okay. All right, so here we go. Love the Lightspeed has a loudness knob, right? Is it preferred to run the amp at max volume and adjust the guitar, or vice versa, or neither? No, it's not that. These aren't dumb questions at all. It all depends on the way you play and what you're playing. I usually gig with my Two-Rock. That thing is just too big and heavy to deal with on a gig. I mean, it's heavy and big. So my Two-Rock I'm running nice and clean, and so I can hit the front end of it with pedals, and it's pretty loud, but I don't punch the front end of the amp too hard. It's a great pedal platform. Something like AC30s are not that great pedal platforms if you're going to try to get over any amp you're trying to get overdrive out of itself. An amp with no effects loop or something are not great pedal platforms if they break up easily. So that's because if you're trying to run delay and reverb and you want to get more volume out, you're going to max out and you're just going to get more distortion. So a lot of times with amps, as you turn them up, they get to like 4, and they don't get louder, they just get more distorted. And so you kind of topped out. So you need more headroom. So when I'm gigging live, I need to have headroom when I play, because even though I'm really gained out for fun here, I like to have this, kind of a clean tone. And I like to have the headroom to be right, so I can really play with how much volume I have on my own. I'll go to my other pedal board just in a second. I won't plug it in, but I'll run over again what I'm talking about, how you can create that on a pedal board. All right, so one more. Just finishing that question. I prefer the amp to run at max. Is it preferred to run an amp at max volume and adjust the guitar, or vice versa? It depends. Max volume can be insane. It all depends on what the gig is. If you want to run your amp clean and use pedals, I suggest an amp that has more wattage than a very low wattage amp. If you're intending upon getting the amp to do its thing and break up, you don't intend upon having lots and lots of options, then sometimes a lower wattage amp can be great. It all depends on the size of the gig, and all depends on what the gig is. Hence why I've got a bunch of different amps. But one thing I really like to do very often, as you guys know, is I often run my amps clean and run the pedals into them. That way I have total control over the volume of everything that's going on. For my Two-Rocks to sound really great with the overdrive channel, they got to be kind of loud, and sometimes it's just a little too loud for the gig. And if I want to use delay, which I like, I have to run into the effects loop of the amp. And then you're getting into this whole 4-cable method and all this stuff that I don't want to necessarily deal with on a gig. And you don't need to. If you got a great, clean platform amp like any of my Two-Rocks are, they also have great overdrive channels, but live, like Robin, doesn't use the overdrive channel on his Dumble. He doesn't use it live, just plays clean, and he uses his Zen Drive and his Gladio. All right. Right, max volume on my PV is stupidly loud. Yes, it's loud. So I just have the volume, I don't know, start off where it sounds good, where you feel like you have enough clean headroom, and then you can start adding in the pedals like that. How much do I use the volume on a Strat? All the time. So I never have a really, really sparkly, super sparkly clean amp sound. Like pristine clean. I don't really love pristine clean. I like it on the edge of breakup. Big cliche, but then I can turn the volume knob down. Bring in that volume. Is that light speed on top of that? So. Right? Right, so the volume knob is key to my playing. On a Gibson's or any guitar, I'm riding the volume knob all the time, because that's where I get all the colors and all the tones. So here, so if we're at real gig volume, that would be a really great sparkly clean tone. Like I said, sometimes it's hard to tell online. I keep on saying that, but it really is a different experience. You're like, well, that Marshall's a little distorted. If we were live and I roll back the volume, it would be cleaner, if that makes sense. It's hard to emulate the unemulatable online. Okay, so once again. Fun thing about the Static Ranger, somebody said the standout pedal is the Static Vector Static Ranger. Yeah, well, let's talk about why it's the standout pedal from what we're doing, because it's the most different of all of them. It sounds great, and there's a lot of beautiful things to it, and these are all great. It all depends on what kind of sound you're going for. If you're going for something that does not affect your tone in any way, that's these over here, except for the Klon, you can dial in a bit more the mids, and other pedals that are pretty transparent. If you want something that's going to affect your tone a bit more in a really, really cool way, you could check out a treble booster or whatever a range master type pedal. And then the two together, I love the fuzz with this because it helps focuses the two. So I think it's the Analog Man, right? The Sun Lion does that. That's hard to get. It's like his Beano boost and one of his sun faces. So that's that same thing that I've got going on right here. And it depends on the gig. If you're playing you want that kind of fuzzy sound and, But if you want to get into that doomy Sabbath stuff, this really got to it right away. I started playing. I'm like, oh yeah, of course that's what he was using. Of course that's what he was using. So, pretty cool. All right, any questions, guys? No. This was fun. The Lightspeed sounds really great for getting a Fender Blackface amp on 3 to sound like an amp on 5 without being any louder. It works much better than a Klon because it doesn't mess with the mid-range. That's Jason Solomon. Absolutely. So, just to kind of what you're saying there. So yeah, let's kind of match it up for a sec. So here is. There you go. That's kind of almost just a drive on the Lightspeed. And then the Marshall. Kind of matched them out nicely. So yeah, I can use this as an overdrive pedal where it's emulating boosting the amp. But what I like about it's a super light overdrive. It's not a heavy overdrive. It's an overdrive. It's not a distortion box. That's why people like it so much. On its own, I like it, but I really prefer it as some sort of boost because it doesn't push any low end. On its own, it's really good. It can be a little bright for me, a little bit. I've heard that from other people, just a little bright, but I like it into other things. Do you ever run a Blues Breaker style overdrive or a Tube Scream overdrive? Absolutely, yeah. I love the Blues Breaker style overdrives. I've got the, of course I have a few of them. I've got the Duelist, which is a Blues Breaker on the left side. I have the Nordvang 83 drive, which is a Blues Breaker and a Klon. And then I have, it's here somewhere floating around. I got the Heavy Hand by Kingtone, which is the left-hand side of the Duelist, so it's a Blues Breaker on its own with more stuff. So this is a really great pedal. I want to get to doing a video on this. It's here somewhere. If you looked at the floor, there's just junk everywhere right now. You never understood the boost before. Just figured out it was for when you're in volume 10 and you needed more. No. Yeah, the boost before will just give you more distortion sometimes. So that's one thing you can do. Now, great. I think you got some sales there, Kyle, for the Static Effects. I'm having a great time with it. I just got it. Kyle sent it to me. I should say I'm not getting anything from this. I got this from Kyle. We did some trading on some stuff. And I had other ones, I just never made them work. And this is the first one that I plugged into and been like, man, this is a ton of fun, and I totally get it. Well, the other ones I tried were a bit more, too much of the Cocteau sounds. There were like 2 or 3 options. And here I can get that Sabbathy thing. It's pretty hip, so I really think it's pretty cool. Would you put a volume pedal at the beginning, at the end of your chain? Ooh, it's a good question. Okay. In the middle. How's that? Depending. Okay, so if I'm gonna run, if I'm running into a distorted amp, the volume pedal it would probably be at the end of my chain, I guess. The reason why I'm pausing is because I would always really want a volume pedal in the effects loop in between the preamp and the power amp, because then I can use it as an overall volume knob, but on the floor. Since I use my volume knob all the time on the guitar, right? Having a volume pedal in the front messes with the tonal change of this, because I'll have the volume down this and I'll roll the volume down on the guitar, and I'm like, ugh, ugh. You know, so you start having two volumes down, and they're both going to affect the tone, the way they work, and that drives me crazy. So if I have the volume pedal after my overdrives, that way I can control the whole output of the amplifier. So hold on, and I'll show you what I mean. Right, depends on what you want to do with the volume pedals, what BB's saying. Hold on one sec, guys. All right, this is from the other week. Here's my big board, which sounded great at the gig the other night. I replaced the halo. I went back to the El Cap because I'm just so used to it. All right, so how this would run is this is hopefully answer your question, Rich. I come in here to the Midnight Vibe. You can check this out on my big pedal board video. Onto the Univibe, into the Octavia. And that comes out into the Blue Hippo, which is chorus. I like those sounds before the overdrive. That goes out into my fuzz. The fuzz goes into the Klon, or the Tumnus, into the Duelist, and there's my Shanks overdrive. So this is like a preamp section. I run all that out into my volume pedal. So the volume pedal acts as like a master volume. And then that goes into all the time-based effects. It goes into my delay, and it goes into my tremolo, because I like the tremolo last. So I control the overall volume of everything I'm doing with the volume pedal. So I have the clean amp running, and if I want to turn up on the gig, I just turn this up a little bit, and I have the same guitar tone as I had before. And I use my volume knob to get, you know, the volume knob effects that I want to roll up and clean off my amp. So if these are all like, I'm replacing the amp with this stuff, replacing the amp overdrive. So the amp is being run clean. This is my clean amp pedal board. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's not a budget pedal board in any way, but the concept is simple, of that if I'm going to run a clean amplifier, the way I prefer to do it is the way like someone like Michael Landau does, and that's where I run into a clean amp and I can control the output of everything from my pedal board with the volume pedal, and I control how clean I want my guitar with the volume knob on my guitar. And that has been working great for me, because say you want to do a gig and you want to have a super distorted tone, and you step on your boost pedal and suddenly it's just too loud. I can adjust all of it right here. And for solos, I can just step on this a little bit, dial it back. So this has worked great. I did play this. This is one I would have used with playing with Robin the other night, and I couldn't have been happier. It sounded great. So hopefully that answers that question. Lots of cool. There's so many great options, so many great pedals out there. There's so many cool things. You have to experiment with what you want your pedal to do for you. Do you want a clean boost and you just want more volume without gain? Then you probably have to run into a clean amplifier. If your amp is somewhat distorted, like my Marshall was, and you push your volume on your volume pedal on the floor, then suddenly you're going to distort the heck out of your amplifier. And then you're not going to get something you probably wanted. If I want to push the front end, I'm going to go back to my picture of my pedals. If I want to push the front end of a pedal, so I could stack these, which I didn't do, which might be kind of fun. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just put them all together. So. There you go. That's fun. So that's gain staging. It's another video. So there you go, guys. Thanks for being here as always. Any more questions real fast before I go? I gotta walk my dogs. Smash the likes with the power cord. Cool. Um, I think it's perfectly. Just a few other questions. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. These are good questions coming in too. Um, Jeff, I hope I know how happy you should be with your performance at the bitter end the other day. Thank you very much. Yes, the volume pedal was in the middle. Uh, you never bother with putting the delay into the effects loop. No, I just haven't really worked out the the four cable method. Like I do like delay, but I like having the delay in the floor in front of me. So as a result of that, I'm going to have to run it into the amplifier. Then I have a four cable method. My old Marshall does not have effects loops. The Two-Rock has an effects loop, but it's a passive one, so I need one of those loopalator things. And suddenly I'm going, I'll work it out at some point. And then at some point I just never end up working it out because I really like the sound I can get from my pedals too. So no, to answer that. If I'm just going to do like a blues gig, I don't so much care about delay. I might just use the amp reverb. But if I'm doing my gig, I do like some delay because some of my tunes really, it sounds good on it, fills it out. Okay. Presumably this doesn't all work with solid state amps. Sure it does. You can push at the front end of a solid state amp, especially depending what kind it is. Like I run all this stuff sounds really cool into my Fractal. It has the same effect. So if we're saying a solid state amp, it all depends on how good the input of the solid state amp is. But yeah, that could totally work. Absolutely. I think it's perfectly normal for professional musicians to use professional level gear. Oh yeah, I'm not shy about that. Like, once you start getting into good pedals and you hear the difference, you just do. And I'm not saying it has to be hand wired. It just has to be well made and use good parts. You can tell the difference of an inexpensive pedal to me next to a more expensive pedal. I just can hear it sometimes. Best pedals don't have to be expensive. The best bargain in my mind, like the Tumnus, it's like, what's $129 or something like that. As opposed to getting some sort of crazy Klon. The Tumnus, that little thing that's on my other board, sounds great. I love that pedal. Sounds really close to my Klon. Like, doesn't matter different. So it doesn't matter. I got it on my board and all these other pedals are on there. You just find ones that you like my Shanks fuzz over there. It's just one of my favorite fuzzes. This one is too. This is more, in my mind, a little more Hendrixy, whereas the other one, the Shanks one, is a bit more Eric Johnson-y. I can get that sound at a lower volume. So that's why I end up using that, but I love this one as well. So, they all sound good. All right. And thanks for putting the large board video there, Phoebe. Been super informative. Thanks, Jason. Glad you enjoyed it. I love talking about this stuff. Sometimes you watch the view count and sometimes people are like, I'm getting bored. But hopefully people enjoyed it because there is a big difference between there's overdrives, there's gain staging, there's clean boosts, and then there's definitely things like I said, the static effector, the tone shaping ones. So I like having a bit of both on each board. I like the mid-range boost that something like a Klon gives. I really like the way that sounds. This is more of what you got, which is awesome to have without coloring your tone. And sometimes you can run these two together if you wanted. So it's all sorts of really great stuff that you can do. And then you could have this at the end if it's clean, Right. If you run a dirty amp, then it's more important to run modulation effects, time effects, and a good effects loop. Absolutely. If you're using your distortion from your amp, like the Friedman effects loop is really great. Like it's buffered. It's exactly what you'd want. Send and return, if I remember right. Something like that. Like a really high-end effects loop is really, really cool. The Two-Rock, since they are putting effects loops now, the Dumble style effects loop in some of their amps, but it's not really the circuit of the amp. They didn't do that. So you can get outboard pedals that will allow you to do that better. As I said, on gigs, sometimes I was like, I should run a delay in a loop, and then I just heard it loud with a delay into the front end using overdrives. I'm like, sounds freaking awesome. I'm not feeling like I'm missing anything. So if I wanted to run, like say if I want an AC30 or this Marshall and use the overdrive, then I'm going to run into problems because you have the delay in front of the amplifier, and that can sound kind of ugly. And reverb can definitely sound ugly too. All right, hey, Bill Shikaitis, thanks so much for the top chat. Thanks for everything. Shout out to Mason and Vertex for amazing customer service, for sure. Yeah. If the amp lacks reverb, putting your reverb bed on the effects loop is a must as opposed to up front. Yes, absolutely. You don't want to put reverb in front of an amplifier if you are running the amplifier dirty. It's got a very particular washy sound. It can be cool, but it's not the sound you probably want. You want the reverb that would be in the effects loop. The Barber Limited and the gain changer are great boost pedals. Not as great as Lightspeed and Bluesbreaker style pedals, but very under the radar. David Barber makes great stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And all very, very reasonably priced. All right, everyone. I got some dogs to walk. 2 big dogs that want it's their walking time. Thanks for everybody hanging out here. Thanks so much to BB so much for being here. As always, I really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who picked up the Minor Triad course. Soling's Minor Triad's 50% off. And thanks to the people who have already picked that up. And if you haven't picked it up, it's a great way to support me and the channel. You can go over to JM Guitar Lessons. I got a bunch of freebies over there if you're new to the channel. A bunch of free things you can get by the links below, free backing tracks. If you like the channel, like I said, going over to JM Guitar Lessons, picking up a course, one of the master classes is a great way to help what I'm doing here, support everything I'm doing, and you learn something, and everything is pretty reasonably priced. So, thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you. Hey, Beavy, you're free next week? I'm going to do next week. And we can talk a little bit about NAMM if we want. Whatever. NAMM schmam. All right, everyone. You just got here for the stream? All right, we'll start over. Thanks, everybody. I will see you on the next one. See you guys. Bye-bye.